We're going to move into our next session of the day, starting off our kind of afternoon half of Thursday. Our first session is a fireside chat called Incorporating Indigenous Knowledge in EA, Lessons from CNA and Teck, where we're going to hear about the innovative work both have done to advance the HVC 2040 project. As a reminder, audience members can submit questions for our speakers through Slido. Instructions should be on the screen behind me, and the QR code is also in the first page of your program. It is now my pleasure to welcome my colleague and the moderator for this session, Emily Vakili, Director of Advisory Services at C3 Alliance, who will be guiding the conversation alongside Sills and Natalie Ross. With that, let's give them all a warm welcome.
Thank you, Logan. Hello, everyone. As Logan mentioned, my name is Emily Vakili. I am the Director of Advisory Services at C3 Alliance. And I cannot tell you how excited I am to be here with you all today on the beautiful territory of the Nlaka'pamux peoples. And I am really honored to be moderating this very timely panel on the incorporation of Indigenous knowledge into the recently approved Highland Valley Copper Mine Life Extension environmental assessment process. So without further ado, I'm going to pass it over to Natalie to introduce yourself.
Hentlak, Natalie Ross in Citxw, Tuthla Merritt Kin. Hi, my name's Natalie Ross. I'm from Merritt, BC. I am a settler of European ancestry living within the Nlaka'pamux territory. I am a senior technical coordinator at the Citxw Nlaka'pamux Assembly, and I feel very honored to be here today speaking and learning from all of you on Nlaka'pamux ancestral unceded territory.
Citxw Unshnaknukwa Nsquatchicha Shakama Sills Ukhwa Milkan Anishinaabe Kwe Muta Shama Unshkatsa Muta Unshkitsa Gregory Sills Muta Nikki Holmes. Hello everyone, my name is Kama Sills. I work actually at Highland Valley Copper and have been working with Natalie and the Citxw Nlaka'pamux Assembly for the last several years. We're here to talk a bit about the authorship process. And before I guess we get into that and introducing a little bit about CNA and HVC, I did want to say Kukshem to the elders and certainly the young ones for the welcome to the territory, for the prayers, and for the opening of our session. I want to acknowledge that I am a visitor in this territory, and I certainly want to respect and honor the unceded ancestral homelands of the Nlaka'pamux people.
Before we start, I just wanted to point out the artwork we have here. It's kind of a visual representation of the story we're going to be telling today, and it was created by Kayla Phillips, who is an Nlaka'pamux artist. Okay, well, I think we're going to start with an overview of the Citxw Nlaka'pamux Assembly and Highland Valley Copper before we dive into the rest of our presentation. So this Citxw Nlaka'pamux Assembly, also known as the CNA, was created in 2013 by the 8 participating bands, which are Ashcroft Indian Band, Boston Bar First Nation, Cooks Ferry Indian Band, Coldwater Indian Band, Nikamin Indian Band, Nuwaij Indian Band, Shakin Indian Band, and Siska Indian Band. And they are 8 of the 15 bands within the Nlaka'pamux Nation. The CNA was created and is rooted in hundreds of years of history and legacy of protecting Nlaka'pamux people, the culture, and title and rights. We also have a participation agreement with Highland Valley Copper, and that outlines the work we do together, and it supports the work that we're talking about today, as well as cultural and community initiatives.
And a little bit about Highland Valley Copper. So Teck Resources Limited operates Highland Valley Copper operation. The site is located in Nlaka'pamux territory, just outside of Logan Lake, for those of you who might not be aware. The current life of mine for HVC is 2028. HVC endeavored on a project proposal called the Mine Life Extension, which is, although Emily mentioned some approvals, there's been an approval recently for the environmental certificate But we do recognize that we still have some work to do in terms of permitting approvals and some pieces that way. But if all approvals are in place, it would extend the life of mine approximately 18 years. I do want to also acknowledge, although today we're speaking a lot to the work that HVC has been doing with the Nlaka'pamux Assembly, I do want to recognize that HVC has been working and moving through this process with a number of other Indigenous governments and organizations. In fact, this process has involved 4 Indigenous-led assessments as well as HVC's assessment.
So all this started off when Highland Valley Copper started talking about their mine life extension in 2017. From that, CNA realized that we needed a strategy to go through environmental assessment processes. And so we developed our CNA environmental assessment strategy, which outlines how we're going through environmental assessment, how we're protecting Nlaka'pamux title and rights through that process. There's 3 key relationships that we focus on in our strategy, which is looking at community and leadership, Highland Valley Copper, and as well the Environmental Assessment Office. And we'll focus on the relationship with Highland Valley Copper for the purpose of this presentation. And from the beginning, we had a really collaborative approach with Highland Valley Copper. We had outlined that we were completing an Indigenous-led impact assessment, and HVC was really supportive of that process, even though the 2002 Environmental Assessment Act didn't really hold the same space for that. So yeah, we're really grateful for that. And as things moved along, the project switched over to the 2018 Environmental Assessment Act, which actually aligned with what we had developed within our strategy. And so we participated under the section 19.4 with the Indigenous-led impact assessment. I'd also really like to thank Tamlin Botel and Natalie Warren for the work they did on the strategy and being able to implement leadership's vision. So thank you.
Natalie mentioned collaboration, and I really do think that HVC and the CNA approached this work through a collaborative lens. And there was respect and understanding, not only working together through the BC EAO process, but certainly the CNA EA strategy and the Nlaka'pamux impact assessment framework. And when I was trying to think of some examples, different examples, I guess, of some of that collaboration. And I've been on the project since 2021. And at that time, CNA had brought forward some concerns in terms of some of the existing condition reports and baseline reports that were kind of connected to the project. And through discussion and the opportunity, I think, to really advance, again, all the processes involved and really create a fulsome experience, the CNA and HVC, respecting protocol and process, developed an information sharing agreement, and then went through a number of different initiatives together. One, community-based data gathering. There was a CNA-led Nlaka'pamux socioeconomic land use baseline. There was a development of community-based indicators and a historical water conditions study. The other key piece, I think, in collaboration is that both the CNA and HVC recognized that it needed to be more than just technical engagement. That really engagement, mutual, and collaboration involves varying levels of engagement. And I think that both within CNA, within HVC, and together, the recognition of engagement at a leadership level, at a technical level, at a community level, and then also in CNA's case, which Natalie will speak a little bit more about, was a Nlaka'pamux or a CNA community working group that act kind of like an advisory body from community. So really multi-approach to meaningful engagement.
During the application development phase, the CNA had identified authoring into 2 chapters originally. So that was the culture and Indigenous interest chapter. However, as we were moving through that and having more conversations, we actually realized we would like to author into as many chapters as possible within that application. And so that's what we did. And it was a combination of being able to show that Nlaka'pamux knowledge is at an equal weighting of Western science throughout the application, creating a holistic application, as well as being able to protect the knowledge that was going into the application. And so we worked through that, and that shift supported our future work with our Indigenous-led impact assessment, as well as the Environmental Assessment Office's effects assessment report.
So authorship in the application. That was definitely a new concept for HVC and for Teck. I think it was something that people really had to try and wrap their head around. It was an opportunity to understand more. HVC was interested in authorship. HVC was interested in understanding more about how to bring together Indigenous and Western insight into an application. HVC was also interested in decolonizing aspects of this process and saw it as a step forward in that way. And so HVC and CNA committed to an unknown journey that we had to figure out how to kind of navigate through. It's my turn still, isn't it? We even collaborate, we have the same paper that we're looking at. Nope, right here, actually. Yeah. And so I had said that we had decided to, dedicate the process. And we did spend a lot of time meeting, workshopping, trying to figure out what does this look like? How do we roll this out? How do you write in a chapter? Do we give you the chapter? Like, how are we going to do all of these kinds of pieces? And a little bit later, we tell a few of the challenges we experienced and how we navigated them. But in the end, the reality is the Citxw Nlaka'pamux Assembly authored directly into 86% of the chapters in the HVC MLE single application package.
Yeah, as Kema said, we did have challenges. I think that's just how this work goes. And I think we'll highlight a few of those, and then we'll highlight how we moved through those. I'll start off with how the CNA, the challenges that we had. I think one of them was defining Nlaka'pamux knowledge. We respect that knowledge is held at the nation level, and CNA represents 8 of the 15 bands. So we wanted to be clear and respect that throughout the application. We also were really intentional in the way we included Nlaka'pamux knowledge throughout the application, whether, not including things, because this becomes a public document, we want to, not include things that are too sensitive or area-based, as well as making sure we're taking the proper protocol when we're talking to people and getting their data and their information. So checking back with them that we're able to use this information. We're going back and verifying what we have is correct and what we understand is correct. We also, as we were authoring into the application, CNA's writing in the lived experiences of the community members. We were realizing that this kind of contradicted with what HVC had written. And so we were trying to figure out a way to kind of delineate that from what CNA had written and what HVC had written. And so we came to including blue boxes around our text. And this made it really clear that it was CNA authored information, as well as it copyrighted our information. And so that was really important that our text couldn't be changed. We placed a lot of trust in HVC as our stuff would go off into review, that our information wouldn't be touched. Or if there needed to be some minor changes, we'd discuss and make those changes together, as well as HVC having a lot of trust in us and what we're authoring, and that it's respectful of them as well.
A couple of the other challenges, I think, is in terms of industry and maybe process. is really understanding Indigenous knowledge. You know, there's guidance documents out now, even within the EAO, and it offers some form of definition. But I think really this opportunity, the challenge was around moving that needle a bit, and really understanding what Indigenous knowledge was, and specifically what Nlaka'pamux knowledge was according to Nlaka'pamux. And so that was one of the kind of challenges. I have to look at my paper again. Oh yeah. So the current climate and recognizing kind of the new way of doing business. So Natalie talked about moving from the 2002 to the 2018 Act. And with that comes a lot of new territory. And I think it's a lot of new territory for status quo industry experiences. And so really embracing the concepts and principles of mutual collaboration, consensus, free, prior, and informed consent, UNDRIP, DRIPA, all of those pieces were all involved in a new learning experience for a number of people internally. That was a challenge. It's definitely a huge education piece and an experience piece for folks. One other critical, and I don't know how many people in the room, this is my first ever EA, but if you've had experience, you can recognize that one of the largest challenges is schedules, whether it's legislative, CNA schedule, HBC schedule, all of those pieces, and that was a huge factor in the concept of the authorship process, as we're still trying to find our way through. We did identify some of the ways that we navigated. We've had chance now, to have a bit of critical reflection. And we really found that there were some key pieces in terms of how we were able to navigate this and really create successful, groundbreaking work. One of those was a strong team on both sides. Having that capacity, having that knowledge base and support and consistency, really key. The other piece is relationship. Relationship and communication. So the opportunity to have a mutually respectful and trust-based relationship was a goal in this process. Communication that was very authentic. We had to have hard conversations, awkward conversations sometimes. Timely communication. Don't let stuff fester. Check assumptions. Have those open and honest conversations to really build that relationship that carries things forward.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I'm gonna mirror a lot what Cam has said, but from the CNA side, I think the dedication. We knew where we were going, but trying to navigate a route, create a route. We'd never done this before, but we knew that we were both dedicated to this process, and so there was no worries there. Having those difficult, authentic conversations. We're not beating around the bush. We're saying what needs to be said, and sometimes you're being really vulnerable there too. And so, yeah, just a lot of building trust throughout that process. We had an existing relationship because HVC is an operating mine currently, but we really brought that relationship up. Yeah. Another big part for the CNA was our community working group, and so it's a table where grassroots discussion can be had. We verify, we'd come back and validate what we knew. They would point us in the right direction, and so, they're also, it's made up of community members, I didn't say that. But that was a really important part for us. We just dived into things. It was very technical. We've been working together for 3 years, so that was a really important part. As well as capacity. So for the CNA, we're kind of a small team, so we had all hands on deck, but the ability to have that as well as consultants, and we were really, happy to have Falkirk Environmental and Core Geoscience supporting us in areas that we needed help with.
Fantastic. So I'm going to keep an eye on the time, but I'd love to cover some of the questions from the audience. And so a theme that I'm seeing popping up on Slido, and feel free to submit some additional questions as well if you have them, is what's next for both of your teams. I think we'll chat a bit about this first one up here. I'd love to hear a bit from you, Natalie, on the thinking of pulling all these lessons learned from the process with the Highland Valley Copper and then applying that to other projects and development activities within Nlaka'pamux territory.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think we've learned a lot, and we feel like this is kind of the standard for our Nlaka'pamux communities. We've set that standard. This is what we want to be able to replicate, maybe to a different scale with other projects, but we have a strategy, we have a framework, and we can apply that to different projects depending on their size. Yeah, we can scale it down, as well as because we have our Nlaka'pamux impact assessment reports. Like we can do that whether there's an assessment that's needed, like the regulatory assessment. Yeah.
Thank you. And Cameron, maybe I'll pivot this question to you as well. So given all the lessons learned from this process, is there any thought in your mind and your team's mind around taking those lessons and applying them perhaps wider within Teck or even within the Highland Valley Copper project as you move forward to different initiatives?
I mean, I think that there has been an impactful shift in HVC and in Teck in terms of the openness and the approach, the willingness to look at doing things in a different way, in a better way. And I think that piece is going to carry on. Natalie and I were even talking with a few other folks earlier, and there's a lot of legacy pieces out of the authorship process. Like Natalie mentioned, there's the elevation in the relationship. Our relationship with CNA doesn't end with the EA approval process or the authorship process. And on the graphic that was up there before, it intentionally shows that the path keeps going kind of off into the, into the unknown, is because our relationship and our work together continues. But the legacy out of the authorship process was the elevation of that, and our knowingness of how to work together and how to move things through and find solution. So I think that's been huge.
Fantastic. So unfortunately, we are coming to the end of our time, so I do want to give you both a chance to wrap up. And so perhaps I'll start with you, Kim. It'd be fantastic to hear for this audience. There's been so much conversation from all of our speakers about the importance of partnership. So if you can, one piece of advice or lesson to take away.
I do have one. I guess for industry and proponents and folks who do work with Indigenous communities, one of the key aspects around developing that relationship is not only obviously approaching in an open way and with some consistency and transparency, but really it's about shifting and getting vulnerable. HVC took a number of steps to get vulnerable by sharing out drafted chapters, half-loose chapters, by our authors even having to wrap their own head around letting go of ownership, of something. And so I think that there's a real plus and a real benefit when people come to a relationship in a humble way, but you need to be able to express that. And I think that some folks need to get more comfortable with that piece.
Fantastic, and I'll pass it back to you, Natalie.
Yeah, I think it's similar to what Cam is saying. It's just working together, and I think having those authentic conversations is really important. I think from our side, it's like, yeah, we want to see transparency and how our comments or what we're saying is feeding into things, or being able to author things like we're seeing the work done, and that's really important, and we want to keep working that way.
Fantastic. So I'd like to thank you both. Thank you all so much for being here today with us, and I believe both of you will be around, so if you have further questions, come up and continue the conversation. Thank you all very much.
Thank you.
All right. Thank you very much, Emily, Kama, and Natalie, for sharing those valuable insights and speaking about a project that is so momentous and significant for BC. On behalf of the 9th Indigenous Resource Opportunities Conference, we have a small speaker gift for all of you today.